Is it wrong to raise a hand to a child, especially when they're very young? It is common in the Indian culture, but in the West, there are severe criminal consequences. What if a mother innocently slaps a child? Is that bad? There are a lot of differences between Indian culture and Western culture, and as someone who came from the West and has embraced and been embraced by Indian culture, I'm always very, very careful and very hesitant about value judgments, about good, bad, better, not better. But in this case, I'm going to make a judgment. It is wrong to hit children for any reason, at any age. And I say that not as someone from the West of Western culture, but as someone who has spent a lot of years studying child development. And what we know is it doesn't work. Why do we do it? Let's look at why we do it first. We do it to discipline. We think I have no other option. I had to put this child in line. But what we find is it actually doesn't work. We get, again, like in the other example, at the very best, we get behavior modification. I better fold up my clothes or mom is going to hit me. I better not leave my jacket on the floor or I'm going to get hit. I better do the dishes or I'm going to get hit. Better not talk back or I'm going to get hit. So we get behavior modification. But what our world needs today, much more than obedient children, are awake children, are courageous children, are open children, are connected children, grounded children. That's what we need for our world. Because if they obey me today because they're afraid I'm going to hit them, tomorrow they get into a situation where someone else is pressuring them to do something, well, they're very likely to do it. Then what you end up with is you've created people who are just obedient. And there are way too many people in the world today collecting obedient people for very wrong reasons and preying on people's obedience. We don't need more obedient people. We need people who do the right thing for the right reason, not because they're afraid they're going to get hit. That takes a little bit more time, a little bit more creativity, a little bit more connection on the part of the parents. It's a lot easier to just slap a kid. Yeah, they'll shut up. It's a lot harder to sit down with them and understand what is the root of their screaming. What is the root of their behavior? It takes a lot more time, a lot more creativity, and it requires parents to be prepared to go there with their children, to be open, to be honest. But that's what our world needs. Because when they are connected to themselves, to God, to the universe, they're going to do the right thing anyway. But they're not going to do it because they're afraid of being hit. And it may not be your right thing. It may not be according to your agenda as parents. But it will be what our world needs. Because your agenda is based on how your parents raised you. So by the time you get around to raising your children, that agenda is already a few decades old. Our world is in a different place. So I do not believe unless the only possible exception that I would make for that rule is if a child was literally in physical danger. So if you were cooking on the stove, let's say, and your child reached out to touch the hot stove, and you turned and instinctively to get the hand out of the way, immediately you slapped it out of the way, I would say that was okay. But what I would then hope was that you would turn around and say, Beta, or child, I'm so sorry for hitting you. This is very hot. It's going to burn you. Look, give me your little pinky. We're going to get close to it. We're not going to touch it. We're just going to get close and you're going to feel the heat. And so I had to hit you. But I hope I didn't hurt you. I would hope that we have that capacity. But it requires humility. And it requires the courage to look at how we were raised. As much as we love and respect and honor and adore our parents, to also understand that maybe they didn't necessarily do everything exactly right. Just because we turned out okay doesn't mean that it was all exactly perfect. Because that's what you hear a lot. We go through it in schools. We run several free schools. And what we went through in the beginning to get teachers to stop hitting students. And what we were told was, well, I was hit in school. I turned out okay. It's the only way to get kids to behave. No, it's not the only way to get kids to behave. It's the fastest way to get kids to behave. It's the easiest way to get kids to behave. It's the least creative way to get kids to behave. But no, it's not the only way to get kids to behave. And so we always, whether we're parents or whether we're teachers, to me, there is never an excuse, again, other than as the only option to prevent a child from harming themselves worse. Is there any excuse? I don't care if it's the cheek, I don't care if it's the shoulder, I don't care if it's the rear end. There are other ways of teaching our children. But we have to be prepared to spend the time, to have the creativity, to be open, to go there with the children, rather than, I've got to catch my TV show. And then what you will find is we will raise children who are courageous, who aren't afraid that if I don't follow orders, I'm going to get hit. We raise children who are open, who know that from the time I was young, people listened. And they respected me. They explained things. They didn't just tell me, sit down and shut up or I'm going to beat you. I was given from childhood a sense of myself, which means I'm going to be someone who's going to move through the world with the awareness that, yeah, I can make a difference. Yeah, I have something to say. Yeah, it matters. Yeah, I'm of value. Not just when I'm obedient. And this is what our world needs today. Are courageous, open leaders